and welcome everyone to San Francisco Urban Ag. I'd like to introduce you to us. We are a committee of individuals that are dedicated to food justice, food security, and the urban agriculture community development. We're here today gathered to have a fireside chat and discuss very topics that is of very importance to all of us. So I'd like to leave the floor open to Allison.
Great. Well, thank you, Jackie, and welcome everyone. I represent the Cow Palace, and I know that a lot of people will think of the Cow Palace as this event pavilion, and it's maybe a place where you came to see a show or attend a concert. But the Cow Palace is one of 52 state-run fairgrounds, part of the total California network of 77 fairgrounds. And while all of these properties are largely known for parties, gatherings, entertainment, and carnivals, really the mission mandate for all of them is to promote local agriculture of the community and to the community. And so really that means connecting local agriculture with the people who consume it, the people who need it, and people who can support it. And the way the Cow Palace does that is maybe a little bit different than your average fairground. But we, during our events, make sure that we have a couple of different events happen. We set up an urban agricultural hall where we have local producers that can connect with the community. We also host a number of young children, grades K through 5. Last year we saw 1,000 who come to the Cow Palace during the Grand National Time and the Junior Livestock Show and get to connect more closely with farm animals, producers, and really understand where their food comes from. And then another place that we advocate for and support is we're one of the founding members of the relatively newly formed San Francisco Farm Bureau, which was a great surprise to everybody across the rest of the state. But the Farm Bureau is fantastic, formed by the organizing advocate for agriculture was State Treasurer Fiona Ma, who called up several people and said, San Francisco needs a farm bureau. We need these urban producers to be connected to the communities and vice versa. And the Farm Bureau promotes local urban agriculture through advocacy, technology, and education for both adults and children. And that's what we do.
Thank you, Allison, for sharing that. And I'd like to open it up to the panel to introduce yourself and what organization you're a part of, and a little tidbit of why you love what you do. Come on, Brandon.
Sure. Brandon Stevens. I'm part of the San Francisco Beekeeping Association, as well as some small businesses that we run here in town for honey distribution and management of hives within the city. I love what I do because I help support our local pollinators as well as honeybees and provide a really sweet treat for everybody with our products. We also do upscaled products as well, so value add things like candles, lip balms, etc. We also do a lot of education across the board. We like to teach people about bees, both adults and children, just to kind of get them a little bit closer to our local pollinators and how they can help with our food systems. I'll pass it on to Alex.
All right, thank you, Brandon. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Kanji. I'm born and raised in San Francisco. In my work background, primarily in art education and community-based activism, but due to continued budget cuts, decided to transition to garden education. An underlying component of my approach to education is liberation pedagogy, which is education in classrooms and communities where civic engagement is emphasized, that encourages social transformation and helps preserve democratic values. And the teaching the basics of urban agriculture became very appealing to me. And for the last 4 years, been pursuing that in various capacities. The garden as a classroom, right, provides educators with the opportunity to include more like multiple learning types into their curriculum. And I think what I love, the absolute most about working with community in the field of urban agriculture is how open-ended gardening results may be. And the process of gardening as a teaching metaphor, really, for our own development, to stay flexible, open-minded, emphasizing the interconnectivity of all things. And it's just a fantastic tool for teaching cause and effect principles to students. So yeah, that's just a little something about me. And I'll pass it off to Rob.
Hi there. Good afternoon. My name is Rob Benetton, and I also work with the Cow Palace. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator. Cow Palace has a number of community-oriented programs that we offer each year. As Allison had alluded to. And what really drives me is urban agriculture and community food systems can really wrap around and become community development opportunities through family-based and interactive land stewardship. So quite literally, on some level, through touching soil and engaging with local community residents, urban farming can actually become such a thing where every day is Make a Difference Day. And so I'm going to popcorn it over to Thomas Schultz with the USDA. He's the County Executive Director for the Farm Service Agency of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Go ahead, Tom. Thank you.
Well, Rob, thank you for that introduction. Again, it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Jackie, for inviting me, and we really look forward to this discussion. I've been a lifelong farmer. I grew up over in the San Joaquin Valley and then eventually went to school up in Northern California and started in the kiwi fruit business in the late 70s when it was just a new commodity here in California. Did that for 40 years, and we grew up to a 200-acre organic farming operation. And eventually I did not want to retire, so I wanted to get back into the ag side of it and went to the other side of the fence with the USDA. And as Rob mentioned, we're based, the Farm Service Agency is part of the USDA, which is 100,000 employees. It is shrinking a little bit over the last year, but we're still going strong. The FSA side of it is an organization that has 2,700 offices throughout the United States in almost every county. And what we do is we supply disaster assistance to growers that might have a crop failure. We have small farm loans available. And we also do a lot of cost sharing for organic. For example, if an urban grower wants to start an organic operation, we cover about 75% of those costs to sign up. Same thing, if an urban grower wants to sell to a retail outlet who may require some type of food safety certification, we also cover those expenses up to around 75%. We have 27 different urban ag centers throughout the United States. We were in the Farm Bill, and normally you think of big ag with millions of acres of soybeans and corn, where the last Farm Bill, they recognized that urban ag needs a voice, and that's what we're out here trying to do. Every program fits urban ag, but part of our outreach events, we've had numerous ones across the Bay Area. We're trying to find out what the urban farmer can use in our FSA. And also we know everybody likes grants, and we have every fall and spring, we have 10 different $10,000 grants that are offered in the Bay Area. So we're here to listen, we're here to help, and hopefully we can join with you folks in the future and continue on the urban ag movement. Thank you. And I'll pass this on to Jackie, our host. I guess you're the last one left.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jackie Lopez. I am an advocate for food justice and food security here in San Francisco, but as well as globally. A lot of the work that I've done has to do with being a food system architect in many different ways and helping small countries, but as well as domestically here in the United States, and being a community builder and bringing people like all of us here today together to make all of this very much possible. Past work I've done has been some service work with AmeriCorps many years ago, along with, the new San Francisco Farm Bureau, and I'm an alumni of Rob's program with the Urban Ag Certificate Program through UC Extension, and so much more to say. And I'm very grateful to you all joining us. I would like to take this time to really go in deeper into the topics that are important to current events. And with that being said, I want to discuss further in the current state of urban ag and the regional trends versus the national side of things. I'd like to bring the floor Tom and Rob.
Surely. So I'll set a little bit of regional context here. We're at a point globally where about 56 or 57% of the world's population is living in cities. We have less than 1/10 of 1% of fresh water remaining on planet Earth that is potentially potable. And some stats pre-pandemic were in California, where that we have about 371 census tracts in the state that are considered food deserts. And Of those, about 85% of them are actually urban census tracts. Now, given the trends of urbanization and globalization worldwide, and in California, one would think food access and security would be relatively easy. But these statistics are referring to folks who live greater than a mile away from a supermarket in an urban area. And that said, we need to think about, and the UN actually said so back in 2015, different ways and forms of growing food together, and also consider the fact that there has often been a trend in urban and regional spaces that food production has been pushed out of cities. So the USDA, the Cal Department of Food and Agriculture, and many of the local organizations and agencies, as well as many community-based organizations, have been doing a great deal of work around food access and security in this landscape. With that, I'm going to just pass it off to Tom. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. And coming from the valley across the hills there, and then even I'm so old, I used to show steers at the Cow Palace. So that was my experience in San Francisco. But what I've learned since we started this program back in 24 is that, like Rob said, I've never realized the amount of food desert type situations that you have in the Bay Area. And getting these outreach events going, it really is an eye opener for me, and we need to really pursue that. And also, I know I hear it over and over that land access to have urban agriculture established is difficult, and hopefully we can work with that. And I know Rob is much more tuned into that than I am, but I know there's a lot of challenges out there. I've had people come to me and say, I just need a little truck with a refrigeration unit to get my product down the road, and we're here for that in the USDA and in any way we can help. But we're learning too, and we realize the challenges out there are great. But, farming's always been a challenge and nothing but problem-solving situations. Hopefully we can keep moving forward and keep this movement going. Thank you.
I think what's the really great key points to take from this is that there's a lot of these different groups and organizations that have forged ways for urban agriculture to take off locally here in the Bay Area, but as well as throughout the United States, and much of the work that Rob and Tom has seen throughout the years of development of industrial farming evolving to more local food and how those opportunities come before us. And for my own personal travels, I've traveled over the East Coast and the South, and as well as internationally, to see what is the new system of food. And urban agriculture and urban food production has become more popular than any other time I've seen in the name of sustainability and supply chain challenges, specifically within the common challenges of tariffs and there being an impact on laborers. So having food to become more local has become a more nationwide trend. I was in DC and they have a whole urban ag movement there along with the Parks Department leading it. And then there's Tulsa where they're having indoor urban growing for a variety of different specialty crops like leafy greens and herbs. So this is something that's becoming more popular nationwide and is gaining more traction year after year. So moving on into what we were discussing furthermore into food and opportunities. So going forward into what I discussed about tariffs and local food, we need to discuss a little more about opportunities and possible economic growth. Brandon, I'd like to invite you to discuss on this matter.
Sure, happy to hop in. I really wish James was here as well, because the ability to grow even just small quantities of mushrooms at your house or even in your basement to be able to sell at a market is something that's growing as an option too. I won't speak super deeply on that point because James could probably cover that in another fireside chat in the future. But from a honey perspective, and then a little bit more broadly about just pollinators, I'd like to touch on a couple topics. We're starting to see a lot of food fraud within specifically the honey business. So we see a lot of inbound from imported honey that's actually not honey. It's like rice bran syrup or colored corn syrup. And it's mostly due to a challenge that we're not getting a lot of funding to do inspections at the county, state, or even sometimes the federal level. So it becomes hard for us to to really truly understand what food we're consuming. So focusing at local levels, you can meet the producers of your food, right? So if you can go to these farmers markets or even local stores that carry local products from vendors that are local within your city and within your urban environment, you have a much higher guarantee, or maybe not a guarantee, but a much higher propensity that it's going to be high quality food that's produced by people that care about their community because they're living in the community. So if we speak specifically to honey, you know when you're buying it from a producer in the city, specifically here in San Francisco, that's backed by a very large organization that supports them with how do we manage our bees here and how do we manage our hives here in the city. What kind of treatments do we provide in order to create very clean honey as opposed to honey that's produced in scale sometimes is laced with antibiotics. So you also have to be very cautious about that. So there's a lot of benefits to your own personal health, the consuming locally as well, because the people that are close to small production tend to want to produce food that they want to eat as well. So they're going to be much more focused on higher quality products. There's also a lot of value that you can add outside of just traditional single products, right? So if you're looking at buying something from a local farmer, they may have one product, but they also tend to do a lot of value adds because they don't want to waste their product, right? So they might ferment it, they might age it, they might value add it into a jam or a jelly. And if we look at honey, we do things like wax products, mustache wax, obviously. We do candles, we do balms. You can produce a lot of things out of these hives, and you can, as an individual producer, bring these to markets. And different markets have different rules, so of course you'll have to learn those. But in San Francisco, we have a handful of markets that are very open to wanting new vendors all the time. And they will either split them on the craft side or the food side. So if you're a honey producer, one of the challenges is products from the hive fall into both of those categories, right? So you've got craft products, which are your waxes, your candles, maybe like wood wax for carpentry. And then you have the food side, which is the honey. As a producer, it's actually pretty easy to get permits within the city to be able to sell your honey directly to consumers with a cottage food license. Those items will allow us to really focus on homemade products or products that are small batch. As a producer, you can make up to, even if you just do the Class A, which is a pretty low cost entry, you're looking at being able to produce up to $75,000 worth of value for yourself. These are with either upscaled goods or direct goods from your products. So you could think of jams, jellies, honeys, mushroom farming, etc. And if you scale up even further to the cottage food B, you can go up to $150,000 a year. So these are very viable options for people to produce, one, high quality foods for themselves, as well as for people within their community, and also a nice value stream for them to either offset their income or completely replace it and just become a full-time urban farmer. I think one of the biggest things that we're starting to see as challenges within the pollination business. So if we scale outside of just the city, we send a lot of bees from the Midwest to California, Oregon, Washington, Texas, Florida, because we tend to store a lot of bees at the industrial scale in these colder environments where the land is much cheaper. And we ship those bees across for the pollination. Basically, it's like a big loop around the country. That can create a lot of problems that we're not getting into today because it's a long conversation. But what it does do is it produces a lot of potential value add to these farms. Now we've got all of these extra well-pollinated trees that need stone fruit picked, as an example. And we're starting to see bigger challenges on the other side because of current policies where our laborers are unwilling or uncomfortable or potentially even scared or terrified to go to work. So we have food that's rotting on the vines, and because it's hours away from people in the Central Valley or in some states, hours away from where they live in the city like Chicago, they're not going to be able to go there and get them themselves like a U-pick. So when we start to centralize more food forests within the city and we do things like urban gardening or even rooftop gardening, one would create more forage for our local pollinators. So these are both our honeybees as well as just native pollinators. So think of like mason bees, bumblebees, and flies. These are very important to the broad ecosystem within our city. We can't just focus on a single pollinator, right? We need to focus on the whole system. And then we create food that's localized. So if we have challenges with labor, it's much easier to access people that will come help pick this for us within the community because they don't have to drive 4 to 6 hours to get to the farm. Maybe it's 30 minutes on a bus. And then they can go to a hot house that's growing tomatoes that needs extra hands. These are all things that I think really trying to focus our food system more locally, less about large scale industrial ag, which is, there are benefits to that as well, but really focusing on the food that we consume much closer in proximity to where we live gains just hand over fist value, right? There's a lot of benefits that we get from it.
And to that point, there's a lot of good takeaways from here where there's the agribusiness side of things for economic development locally, right, Brandon? And how those things can evolve and create a circular economy of food within our local towns or regions. And as we may see, it's very largely in big cities like San Francisco, right?
Yes, very much so. We can also take an example from an island, Iceland. Iceland used to import almost all of its food because they can't really grow much there. But they actually spent a lot of time investing in hothouses on their island. So they grow almost all of their vegetables on island now. And these are all promoted through local pollinators. And they've also shipped in, like, as an example, bumblebees, because bumblebees are necessary for nightshade pollination services. So no bumbles, no tomatoes. And so they've now done this really beautiful thing where they've tried to hyper focus on being really, one, focused on health, local food distribution. It's not always urban because the city's really is just one large city and then a couple small cities. But a lot of them are out in the towns, but they're easy to get to. So people can still get very healthy food very close that didn't have to be shipped across either the ocean or by plane. So thinking about what they did for their citizens on their island, we can take that, scale it to a size of our city, because our city is about twice the population as that island. And we can see that they're able to feed almost their entire population with a lot of their local food. We can do similar here. We can start to develop some of our warehousing downtown, or even like in the Bayview area, to do large scale ag for our citizens to create organic local food. And also, if we have people that want to drive into that and start small businesses, there's ways that, as long as we have the funding or venture capitalists that are willing to promote the upfront costs, we can really develop some interesting potential urban farms here within the city.
Absolutely. And I would think as time progresses, people want to have that fresh tasting tomato or homegrown, because like there's so many problems with food fraud these days. You know, it's like if you go buy some kind of oil, it's like, is it 100% pure? Right? Or the bee for, like, you know, honey, is it pure honey or does it have fructose in it? Like,
with honey specifically, because that's the one I can speak of very directly, it's, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of it's rice bran syrup, so it's not even honey. So if you have a squeeze bottle in your cabinet and it hasn't crystallized in over a year, it's probably not honey. All honey naturally crystallizes. So if you have jars of honey within your surplus or your back stock that are not crystallizing, I would deeply consider replacing that with local honey, because then you know it's truly honey.
Yeah, so there's a lot of great economic opportunities for people who are interested in the agri-food business, whether it's mushrooms, honey, microgreens, whatever can grow regionally within your area. There's a lot of possibilities there for advancement, but as well as like, I think it's great to empower those small groups of growers to co-op together. So, you know, that way strategically there's more scale growth, but as well as to be able to feed your community as well. And I know that's a very big deal, you know, with our local farms, such as Florence Fang Farm and Elamani. And I know you have a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, so we've supported the bee hives that are at Florence Fang Farm for a couple of years now. That helps with a lot of their pollination. So their supplies that they can provide, the food stocks that they're able to grow from that, are much larger hauls based on the pollination contracts that we provide to them. In San Francisco, we have quite a few bee groups, people that are not just part of SFBA, but we have Bee Cause and a couple other education groups. CAMP is also here at the California Master Beekeeping Association. So there's a lot of groups here that can also facilitate conversations with companies that want to start grow operations within the city, because you need pollinators and you may not be able to naturally get them if you're, say, in a hothouse or like a greenhouse. So I think if we continue to develop these relationships across our industries, we can really support each other to continue to foster and grow this urban agriculture within SF's boundaries.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that ties into what's important is, like, how do we create our city to be more greener, fuller? And this is open to our whole panel here to discuss about food and city greening opportunities, the benefits of urban greening initiatives, including carbon sequestration and rooftop gardens. So I know, Brandon, you're really great with the pollinator side, but also want to open it up to the floor to Rob and others here who have experience and insight on this.
Sure. So if you go to other parts of the country in the east and the north, where there's more rain at times or more snow at times, often you'll hear terms like green rooftops or green infrastructure, where the rooftop surface area space has been taken advantage of for developing small or micro farms on rooftops. Now, this kind of opportunity as green infrastructure can also hold water when it rains, reducing pressure on the sewer systems, and also sequester carbon in the soils. Now, and I know a rooftop can only hold so much weight, but there are developed and designed lightweight soils that have been patented specifically for this purpose. But the opportunity also really lends itself to facets of sustainability. If we don't work on ways to improve our air, water, and soil quality, and largely do that through land stewardship at the local level, but a lot of efforts at many local levels around the city and the region and the state, it'll ultimately affect our long-term capacity for use of future natural resources. So, going back to the original stat, we're now on the order of 57% of the world's population living in cities. We got to get our food sources to be closer wherever it's possible. And then also consider the socioeconomic development. Small micro urban farms and also small cottage food industries often, not always, but often tend to have a lower entry barrier level and threshold for entering into starting up as a small business or a small nonprofit in community-based agriculture or food systems enterprises. So social entrepreneurialism becomes an opportunity in this because low and middle income people may be able to first access spaces in places like utility districts, park districts, and school districts, beginning to steward land, get to know the processes of their food growing efforts, and then over time, with the support of agencies like the Farm Service Agency of the USDA, the Cal Department of Food and Ag, may be able to, seek larger land over time. So these are opportunities for many folks from many different cultural backgrounds, many folks from other parts of the country and the world who didn't necessarily grow up in cities often have an agrarian background. So with that, I'll pass the mic back to you, Jackie.
I think this is really great to consider the fact of how this all can pull into not just your urban farmers and food producers. You have your cottage folk that has the contribution towards greening, and within food contributing towards greening opportunities. A great example of we have these microclimates throughout San Francisco, and I'm sure there's other communities that have those similar microclimates. And it is a huge contribution to the abilities of what we can grow, but also having more opportunities for not just food, but just a way of creating green rooftops to reduce like CO2 and have an urban oasis. I know, Rob, in the past you said you've worked with doing some green roofs in the East Coast. Like, what impact have you seen with?
So urban rooftops can, potentially be on private lands, residential, commercial. It can vary, even potentially industrial, depending on the area. But the real potential becomes organizations and agencies that really want to engage in that and stewarding such spaces. It takes some innovation. It may take some retrofitting of such a property in order to make that possible. There is cost involved, like there is cost involved establishing any farm or market garden space. One of the opportunities becomes that pipeline from the farm to the fork that Tom was alluding to, that proximity for direct sales, right? A block, two blocks away, 3 to 5 blocks away. The value in that is not only the social development and relationships and community development, that neighborly really development that wraps thereof around that effort, but it also is about a reduced carbon footprint and cultural expression through the growing of culturally relevant food as well. So there's a couple of sort of both tangents and facets to this work. And no one urban farm has every bell and every whistle. Every one of them are different, and often they fall in different buckets. I like to not just say urban agriculture, but urban farm, community garden, faith-based, therapeutic, and school and university gardens and farms. But again, the opportunity to grow and amplify the effort at the hyperlocal level, really at the block association level, is really there. There's the potential to take down fences across multiple yard spaces on a block and have neighbors grow together. There are potentials for multiple farm yard lots to be able to support a community supported agriculture buying club and literally be small scale commercial, maybe with 100 members, picking up produce a couple times a week. So there's a few different opportunities that this can really grow, but no one size fits all. And that's one of the things about urban agriculture, is that no site is exactly the same, but many of them are doing many different positive efforts that both wrap around food security and sustainability. Thank you.
And Rob, thank you for bringing that note to like how we can build those bridges. I see how Brandon, within the work that you do as a beekeeper, ties into how this is all possible with pollinators. Could you elaborate?
I mean, I think one of the nice things to talk about with urban greening space for pollinators is, especially if you're focused on native plants within your area, whatever your city is, whether it's San Francisco or abroad across the states, planting local native plants really facilitates general pollination. There are food items that honeybees do not pollinate, right? Like I mentioned earlier, nightshades are not pollinated by honeybees. They literally cannot do it. They are not built for it. So when you're looking across, like wanting to encourage the health of our pollinators, there was a lot of money spent on helping us to rescue the honeybees. Agree, very important. As I spend more time as a honeybee advocate and also as a beekeeper, I realize that we need to talk about pollinators en masse, right? It's not just the honeybees that are being hit. They just happen to create a product that we really enjoy. And then you start to look a lot deeper into the other pollinators that are really important to just the environment that we live in. So creating these green spaces, especially with a breadth of native plants, it allows for those natural pollinators and native pollinators to thrive and to exist, and also to cross-pollinate some food items that could be growing. What most people don't realize is that honeybees are not native to the United States. They're not native to North America at all. There are some bees within the Latin America area that do produce honey, but in smaller quantities and not the type of honey that we jar and sell. Most of our honeybees come from Russia or Italy. Some of them, Belfasts, come from northern UK, so Scotland area. But we really need to support not just our honeybees, like we need to support all of our natives. And I think by doing this urban greening space, it will really allow us to encourage new food spaces that have been removed through parking lots, large apartment buildings, taking up all of that natural forage that was there prior to our settling these lands. So I think it's really important to look at some of the things that Rob was mentioning, where yes, it will take a little bit of cost to install, but there are also some simple things that you can do. If you have a plot outside of your house that hasn't been growing anything, maybe it was a tree that was cut down by the city or by you, or it died in a storm and it's just been dead ground, just go, to Sloat here in the city, grab a package of natural or native seeds, throw them down, let them do their thing. They don't really need a whole lot, especially if they're local. If they were meant to survive here, they'll just blossom and grow. Down the street, we had somebody tear out it was like a really old, just evergreen bush that's not native to California. And then they just spread thousands of seeds. And now there's this really beautiful patch of just local forage for our pollinators. It's very simple to do. It costs a couple dollars, and it really, beautifies your area, allows for you to support local pollinators. And then if you want to, I think it was Rob, maybe it was Tom. Actually, it was Tom mentioned you could even grow some of those flowers, collect them, and take them to a local florist. Get a couple dollars for them. So there's a lot of really nice benefits to even just these small plots in your backyard or in your front yard that you can utilize.
Yeah, go for it.
Mine's fairly easy, Jackie. Yours might be a little bit more challenging. So one of the benefits is there was a former beekeeper, he's no longer with us, who spent a lot of time with the local San Francisco commerce groups to understand, and the local think there was a lot of mayor and councilor conversations as well to encourage an understanding that honeybees are non-nuisance animals, meaning you cannot guarantee if bees in my backyard are the bees in your backyard. So even though I have hives in my backyard, my neighbor says, your bees are in my yard. It's like there's hundreds of beekeepers in the city. And even if there weren't, there's native hives in the city, wrapped in trees everywhere. So we can't guarantee that any of those bees are my bees, right? We don't know. They're not labeled. And typically they don't bother people. They don't want to bother people. They want to get nectar. They want to get pollen. They want to get back to their house. And they want to do that a couple hundred times a day if they can, ideally for the little workers. So ultimately for us, we don't really have a lot of challenges here in the city for keeping hives. Some of the things that we need to be considerate of, especially in an urban environment, is the crossover of potential disease. So things that are carried like American foul brood or European foul brood, those are things that we really need to monitor and watch, as well as varroa mites. So pest control and biosecurity is really important. It's not so big of an issue if you're like Mountain Mike, who's hundreds of miles away from the city and 50 miles from any other beekeeper. If his hives die, well, he has a problem, right? But the other 300 beekeepers that are within 5 miles of him don't have problems because he doesn't have those. Here we have a hyper focus on that because we need to guarantee that we are keeping our hives healthy so that our neighbors' hives are healthy. And our neighbors may not be literally next door, but they're within 5 miles of us, right? And that's how far bees will go, 2 to 5 miles to forage. So we need to make sure that those overlaps are considered of each other. And that's one of the challenges that we face here in the city, because there's a lot of different philosophies, we'll call them, to keeping bees: European versus American, South American versus North American, treatment, non-treatment, natural beekeeping, etc. And when those philosophies collide in an urban environment, that's usually when we have the biggest challenges. It's not really about the local government. And they actually have been on our side after a long conversation over many years, and now we have good structure for us. It's more about making sure that we're respectful of the other beekeepers in the city. Mm-hmm.
And to the regulations that Brandon experienced, like all these types of regulations really play a role. And that role specifically is how can we greenify our urban cities if there's these limitations and regulations in the way. So my part in a lot of this is, trying to find ways for our animals to work with us in making those green spaces. Like I have 2 kuni pigs, and those pigs, they basically help with wilding lands and graze those areas because they're much easier to manage compared to goats, which can be a little dangerous sometimes and a bit overly adventurous. So there are some things that we try to find a balance in to create those green ecosystems. Cute little story is I have a little urban farm out here, and it's wonderful since they've came into this space. They've attracted all these types of birds that I've never seen before, and it's created a whole ecosystem. It's nice to be able to witness this. They have their own hierarchy, but it's interesting how when you introduce a type of animal in the community, it attracts other animals in the area that are complementary to your ecosystem. I just find that to be very beneficial to address, some of those challenges that I've had. It's more so about like that farm number because yes, you have land, but it may not be under like an official lease agreement. And to Brandon's point, like I know Brandon has gone through some, getting that farm number because it's like between beekeepers and those who have agribusiness and livestock grazing. You're often like traveling and remote, and it's like, how do I get that number to, apply for grants or other things? But the other main challenge I would say is zoning. So San Francisco's health department is the main department that leads and control of the Agriculture Commission, which is very different compared to most counties. And within the zoning health code rules is that if you have a pig, it is for agricultural purposes. So you cannot have it as a pet. Some of these rules have not been updated for probably more than 50 years, I'm guessing. So you can have a cow, but if you want 2, you need an acre. So, and that's still listed, and it's one of those things where it's like, how can we, as a collective, like we are today, discussing, we have to advocate for some of those changes. Alex, I know you had some experience with these challenges. Could you share your story?
Yeah, I think you're touching on a really salient point, Jackie. And there needs to be a lot of updates. So about a year and a half ago, I decided to try my hand at mushroom production, take a break, and just focus on growing food in Bayview Hunters Point. And a friend of mine, we found a plot that we wanted to go in on, open, hasn't been touched for years. And it was a very illuminating experience, right? Because this was definitely the first time for myself that I've, explored a commercial plot and families in real estate, So I had my dad like help me through this process because like I cannot even tell you how confusing, how unnecessarily confusing the whole thing was. So the issue was that there wasn't a water source on this, little strip of land, but there was a public utility meter that was about 3 feet away. So we went down the rabbit hole. I talked to the water department, which then referred us to the Department of Building Inspection, which I found very funny because there was no built structure on this small little ignored strip of land. You know what I mean? So like there kind of begins the problem. It took about 5 different departments and all of the permits that come with that. And so at the end of the day, in order to have the city connect a public utility water source to a small plot of land that had no water, 6-foot pipe, it ended up costing around $20,000. And that's absolutely untenable. It is extremely discouraging and frankly antiquated. I hear a lot of rhetoric, either from officials, to school levels. There's a lot of enthusiasm for urban ag. There are programs in, in our high schools that train students to become urban farmers. But like, tell me this, how is that feasible when after graduation, when you're on the other side, there's absolutely no support for a young person who decides maybe I don't want to go to college. What we hope by now is a budding green infrastructure. There's a lot of disconnection, and I'm not entirely sure what needs to be done because it seems like things work well when the political whim is on board with this frequency. Personally, I would love to find ways for us to, grow these support systems outside of the political sphere. I'm not sure if it's possible, but I'm curious. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
And to that point, it's like, yeah, there's these regulations, zoning, and trying to get these permits and things done in these past years have been very challenging. But to bring it all together, it's like we're here to collectively solve these problems, address these things so we could continue on without these glass ceilings. And to everyone's point here, it's more so we need to greenify our communities so there's less urban heat, there's more food production, but to create an urban oasis that maybe downtown you'll see a hummingbird, like what Salesforce has done. They have a rooftop park with some forestry and a combination of things to have more of this in abundance, but accessible to you and I, our neighbor, the graduating high school students who want to explore the agribusiness and food locally here in urban agriculture or maybe somewhere else. There's a commonality with these problems that I've seen nationwide. I'm traveling across the country, and these are the same challenges that are not just here, but are also elsewhere. So this evening of us coming together is addressing and talking of these points, because there are some pain points, but within those pain points, we have solutions. And how can we collectively come together to build out those solutions that is middle ground for our urban growers and enthusiasts, along with the support of our city, county, but as well as partners across, county lines. So I think this is a really great highlight of how we've come together today, from the point of, finding innovative ways of how our pollinators produce and increase more of our green places, but as well as life and green things are so important to urban cities. They're a concrete jungle because it's it's a matter of health, public health with these food deserts, and as well as urban heat that has an impact on our population, but as well as the importance of having a food sovereignty. San Francisco County, where there's no grocery store in miles, like most of the Sunset is very challenging to, go to a grocery store. You need a car. And if you have public transit, imagining carrying 100 pounds of groceries, like I've done that before, and it's not fun going uphill. So to that point, it's basically we want your feedback and we want for you to grow with us and collaborate. I like to say we're like a tribe, advocating for a joint value and purpose. And I know, Allison, you've done a lot of work here in our community, and to see this, I mean, including all of us here. But Allison, would you like to share a little bit of what you've seen so far? I know you've done Ag Day, the rodeo,
Sure.
A lot of different things.
Yeah, and interesting thing here. Before I came to work in the fairgrounds industry, I ran Marin County 4-H for some time, and while I was there, 4-H in general, state 4-H was making a shift from kind of shifting the way they were handling projects and trying to infuse something called the Thrive program about just general well-being, and something that was very interesting in the curriculum there, a big section on nutrition. And when what they discovered, and UC Davis researchers informing what happens with the 4-H program, when children grow something, they are more likely to eat it. So if we want a future of healthy children growing up to become healthy adults, having them connected, like somebody said earlier, I think it was Rob, getting your hands in the dirt, watching that seed transform into a plant and then become something you ingest is magical. It's science made magic when it comes to someone who's going to have future well-being connected to agriculture. It makes it real. And so what we see in the urban setting, and I just have to say, to Thomas's point about proximity, when you think about how much nutrition is lost with every mile that something has to travel to get from the producer into your body, it's phenomenal when we look at what our youth are facing with respect to behavioral issues or nervous system issues or all of the things that we didn't deal with maybe when we were kids. Medicine and food can be the same thing, and I think proximity is really, really important. But what we see when we see 1,000 children come in here through Ag Day is absolute wonder and amazement. To Rob's point about populations in urban centers, every generation we become further and farther removed from our food sources. And it affects us physically, but it also affects us from a policy standpoint. People who are, when we're connected to our agriculture and there are issues that are presented to us on the news or through the voting process, we're going to think differently. And so it's really important to us to make this experience available for children so that it just at least starts sparking an interest. We're not going to solve everything in a 4-hour day that we create for a third grader, but we get them on the right path. And we do that by making it be fun. So this is why your guinea pigs are very, very exciting, because these students we see, they have not seen a live animal before, have no idea how large a sheep really is. And we try really hard to present that animal as not just something cute and fuzzy, but something that produces a lot of commodities. The number of things that come from an animal, it's phenomenal when an animal is harvested and what it can provide. That's I think Rob can speak to this too, but I've done Ag Days for a while now, and it is probably one of the most gratifying things when that last bus leaves and they go home for the day, and that their perspective is shifted forever. And this is also the way adults are the same way. So, Brandon talks about most people don't realize where bees come from. Most people don't realize where a lot of things come from. And this is why we sort of invented or imagined the Urban Ag Hall last year for the first time, to get people, adults also, closer to their food source. And I know, Thomas and Jackie, you had a chance to speak with those adults a little bit. We had some folks from Cooperative Extension, and people don't always realize what is available to you locally. They don't remember that they can go a couple of blocks and actually buy something super fresh. So we want to help shine a light on that.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Rob.
Thanks so much. Those points you made really hark around also local food leading to local fresh food, hopefully, and then also that freshness really affecting nutrient density, right? So that point that those who grow their own food are more likely to eat it also really affects the nutritional intake of the kinds of food that they eat, and also land stewardship with minimal impact. Minimal to no pesticide use in small urban spaces, minimal synthetic fertilizer use to not affect water quality in the local area. Also can lend itself towards careers down the line. These kinds of instances of urban agriculture, urban farming can be both on public lands and private lands. They can be commercial or nonprofit. Again, no one size fits all, but ultimately these efforts, when done at many local areas, can affect ground level ozone, ambient air temperature, and ultimately lead towards greater fighting against climate change as well. But within that, we keep our hearts centered on healthy harvests and bountiful blossoms.
Well
I want to
said. That
tag
was
on.
so beautiful.
Can I tag on to Rob's comment about careers?
Go for it.
Yeah, I would say that 15 years ago, kids who came out of FFA either figured they were going to go into production or veterinary medicine. Nowadays, they're going into ag communication, they're going into ag advocacy, and they're going into agricultural law. It's fascinating to see when we see scholarship applications come through, all the career plans and the breadth that they've expanded into. It's pretty exciting for the ag industry, I think.
Absolutely. And I know that the exposure to these opportunities of living green spaces, ag day, even just workshops, how to grow a seed and have it sprout. Like the basic and minimalist thing is so important because a lot of people have become so detached from their food where they think it comes from the grocery store, a lot of kids. And to create those opportunities of exploration of where does my food come from and to be a little more closer, right? I know for Alex, many years, past time, she did ag education with a few high schools. Did you want to share that, Alex, from what you've seen with that past experience?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it took time. It definitely took a minute. It definitely helped when I had engagement from a teacher who wanted to utilize the garden space as an outdoor classroom, which was, a lot of my intention when I was out there, because I was initially doing a lot of landscaping and clearing. But definitely one of my favorite lessons, and just sort of as I was getting to become familiar with the land where this was located at, it's in this area called Glen Park, or Glen Canyon more specifically. And the farm is right up against the Ely Creek, which, if you may know or not know, it's the last public watershed in San Francisco. And it's news to a lot of folks that San Francisco, we've poured concrete over hundreds of little watersheds, right? And so the Ely Creek is very special. Getting teenagers to share that enthusiasm was a little difficult, but I ended up doing lessons on creating a riparian environment. I looked at an area where a lot of rains, floodwater would just sort of hang out underneath the bleachers. So I figured, hey, why not two birds, one stone? Mitigate this water flow, use this as an opportunity. What gets teens really excited and involved? Give them shovels. They want to create through destruction. And that was absolutely, for me, the highlight of it. Because again, I come from an education background where if you keep it open-ended, that's where all the beautiful, nuggets of info come through. And it's the same with like gardening and just staying flexible. So one of the highlights for me was that there was a group, it was like all boys, and they all wanted to dig together. And I kind of was hands off. I just wanted to see what they were up to. And they essentially were starting to self-organize themselves. And, it was like after school, they're in the sunshine. They're not, playing a bunch of video games until they get picked up and then they transfer to another screen. The collaboration aspect, the organic collaboration, I like to emphasize, was really awesome for myself as an educator to witness, because I think that's definitely one of the challenges is like, how do you get teenagers to like care or just to pay attention long enough for these lessons of like when you're planting, tending, and harvesting, this is something that is not immediately compatible, right, with the attention spans that we're coming into with subsequent generations. So it's like another just invaluable aspect of teaching urban agriculture, and in this context specifically in like a high school setting, but even earlier. But for me, the beauty was just how the teens organize themselves, right? How are they going to conduct this labor? And then I got to chime in and say, hey, well, you guys digging a hole? Like, what are we doing here? Like, okay, we'll build a pond. Okay, So just that, just that scaffolding and leaving those parameters wide open, you can, expect some pretty interesting and pretty awesome results. And yeah, I hope they made some good memories that day.
Absolutely. And I'm very grateful for you all to share your experiences. And to Alex's point, it's like you never know what can come of something until you throw a shovel at someone. Surprise! And I think with urban ag, it's very much a surprise. Like, you don't know what's going to happen until it happens. It's very new to most people who are not from this space, because the challenges between traditional farming and urban farming are completely different. I often think that urban ag is a wild animal of its own, but in many good ways, because it teaches not just us, but also like our community leaders of like, hey, there's problems with the water or a variety of other things that are challenging. I appreciate you all coming in and sharing your perspective on this fireside chat on how we can grow together as urban agricultural people, but as well as advocates, and to see education for our young, but as well as be a collective, community-driven individuals and groups. So I would love to thank you all for being here today. And that being said, I want to give a shout out to the Cow Palace. Thank you, Allison and Rob, for being here and supporting this journey as we have been working together collectively through, this 1-year anniversary coming up. So I'm really looking forward to that. And as well to Brandon and Mark Carson work within the San Francisco Beekeepers. You guys have been doing a lot of great work to advocate for our pollinators and see change locally. And as well as, Tom, you've done a lot already so far and really making an impact to see where are there discovery points to help our urban farmers and find that type of synergy to build those bridges within agriculture to see results and support. So thank you for doing that. And Alex, you have done so much for our youth here in San Francisco and education, and also sharing your stories of what are the challenges of starting an urban farm. Like, I am sure there's many others who would love to start. So that being said, we as a group have been doing research and discovering ways to help those enthusiasts and those who are currently urban farmers or food producers to be able to give them guidance along the way. And that's what we're here to support you all here on the journey. And for those who are tuning in, this is our first and more to come fireside chats to go into details. And thank you for joining us. And we hope that you and hope to see you again. I would like for you to go ahead and click that subscribe button to subscribe to our YouTube, Facebook, and as well as our LinkedIn. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.